Welcome back to the Multifamily Leaders Podcast, brought to you by J. Turner Research, our bi-weekly discussion with industry experts that bring you the latest insights you need to stay competitive. I'm your host, Marcus Armstrong. Listen in as we talk to industry leaders on a range of topics that impact your business. This week, I sat down with Chelsea Kneeland, our grand mastermind behind our research department, to discuss our leader survey and the trends that she sees coming up for the industry. Hey, Chelsea, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcus. It's a privilege.
Well, today we're talking about the Leaders Survey. Chelsea, what can you tell us about the Leaders Survey?
Well, there's a lot of great information in it, first of all, which is always the most important part. But also, this is a survey that we've done for over 15 years. So we have a lot of history here to compare answers to and discover trends and really understand what the difference is in the C-suite versus regional manager level and on-site level concerns, where their priorities are, what they're looking forward to or maybe not looking forward to about 2024. It really gives us a depth of understanding that I think is honestly unprecedented in our industry. And so it's a great survey, a great study, and you have the ability to really break down the ideas and the interests of all of those different levels that impact multifamily every day.
So what you're telling me is I should just read it.
Just read it. It's great. Or talk to me for the Cliff Notes, and I can do that.
Well, it's funny you bring up Cliff Notes because that's actually, I think, what we're going to get into today, right? I want you to sit down and really tell us what's going on within the survey. And so the first thing I really want to talk about is the significant decline in optimism regarding rent growth. And so far this year, we've seen this decline in rent growth. So in your opinion, what are the key factors driving this pessimism in rent growth? And how do you see this impacting the industry for the remaining part of this year?
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's talk about the good. We had unprecedented growth year after year, kind of starting a little bit before the pandemic, going on through 2020. I mean, things were great for multifamily. And when things are great, they're great, right? But we all know, and I know someone is like, don't say it. But what goes up must come down, or at least level out. So maybe not down, but level out. And I think that's what we're seeing is, we had such an attitude of optimism and growth, and there was growth in jobs, growth in, our industry overall, growth in new construction, lots of new units delivered. And we were just seeing a lot of wins. And it's not that those are no longer there, but as things start to slow down, we're seeing that our C-suite especially is just not quite as optimistic about the continued pace of rent growth. So all of our studies show that rent growth is still continuing, right? We're still seeing it. We're still seeing good rents, but it's just not at that exact same level that we've seen. So we're just not getting rent growth in leaps and bounds. One of the things that I know you and I will probably talk about later that we are seeing, though, is the increase of the stay of the resident. So I think what we're seeing for the future and what will be impacting these attitudes and opinions about 2024 and beyond is that we're starting to see a shift from we're going to focus solely on new leases and new residents and how we can get, the best of the best when we have folks who are coming in who are new, to how do we make sure we have high resident satisfaction? How do we make sure that we can focus on the residents who are staying here and increasing, their optimism about their community, their satisfaction with their interactions with the staff, and how do we help make them happier? Because that's what we're really going to need to look to, is keeping your residents happy so they stay in your apartment communities.
I love that. And I actually want to kind of backtrack a little bit. You brought up a really important thing. You talked about during the pandemic, as far as like rent growth and how that kind of affected that. But one of the things that the pandemic really skyrocketed was virtual and self-guided tours, right? There was a lot of, people interaction. So my next question to you is, while in-person tours are regaining popularity, virtual and self-guided tours still remain relevant for our industry. And so how do you see the balance between these tour types evolving? And what does this mean for property management strategies in attracting and engaging prospective renters?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I hope I don't give my age away when I say, do you remember I think it was Burger King, you can have it your way, right? Like, was it Burger
Chelsea,
King?
Chelsea, you don't look a day over 25.
Oh, God bless you. Okay, but was it Burger King? You can have it your way was their big
It is
theme,
Burger
right?
King.
So that was their pushback to McDonald's, right? That at McDonald's, it's like you order a cheeseburger, you get what you get, and you don't pitch a fit. Well, at Burger King, you can have pickles or not, you can do what you want. And I think what we have seen here is that we started to offer these new technologies as an industry because we had to. Let's be honest, right? I don't think we had a ton of early adopters early on. I think we had folks that said, okay, fine, we know we have to adopt this new technology now because of the pandemic and the circumstances, we'll do it. And what has happened is people have said, hey, I want what I want, the way that I want it, when I want it, and I want to have the ability to choose for myself. So we've seen that, yes, some people still want to take a virtual tour when that's the option that fits their needs the best. Some people would like an autonomous tour, as I've been calling them. I don't know what our better technology is, self guided, but I think even that sounds a little silly, but they want that ability, right? Maybe they need to go see the apartment or they don't feel comfortable with a leasing agent or they just want that ability to do it on their own. But the thing that I think is fascinating is our industry has always been about connection. We are providing homes. And there is something to be said for the fact that that need for that human connection, someone who can answer your questions right away, someone who can be there and you can talk to them and establish trust for what you hopefully will have as your home for a year or two or 10, that has not gone away, right? We've seen that people still want to talk to a person and they still want to make that connection when they're making this really large decision because it's a huge decision. I can't imagine something more difficult than deciding, where you want to live. And it's also a huge financial decision. So I think there has to be a lot of trust there, especially with that rent growth that we've seen.
I think it's really interesting you bring up human connections because you're right. This is a huge decision. And sometimes I think we get caught up in the industry like this is our job, but to our residents, this is their home. And so I want to take a second and really talk about this human connection. We are seeing staffing concerns, right? So the human connection kind of being maybe inhibited a little bit by the staffing. So the study itself, the Leaders Survey, emphasizes the importance of mitigating staffing risks and managing employee morale. In your personal opinion, what strategies have you seen been successful in addressing the ongoing challenges of hiring and retaining qualified personnel?
Man, it is a challenge right now. And it is something I'm seeing at every level, everyone I talk to. Of course, we've had in our industry ongoing challenges with staffing for maintenance positions. That's kind of been a historical norm. But what we've been seeing the last few years, I would say, again, maybe 3 to 4 years, have really ramped up the focus on the on-site positions and even regional manager and marketing positions. There's just a need to be able to staff and staff well and then retain top talent. One of the things that is interesting to me is that we get a lot of questions about, well, how do I retain folks or how do I attract great talent? How can I fill these positions? And it's interesting that the trend in residents is almost trailing the same trend that we're seeing in staffing. And let me connect these dots because I see you being like, what, make it make sense. So, for a long time, it was like, hey, you're unhappy and you're going to move out. We hate that, but we've got somebody else who's going to come right in and take this up and pay rent. And I think for a long time, that was also not everyone's, but a lot of people's views with our employees too, right? Like, hey, we think you're great, you're doing a great job, but if you leave, there's 10 more people knocking down the door to come grab this position. And that's not the case anymore. So just like we're seeing a pivot, am I allowed to say that? I don't know if we're still having PTSD from the word pivot. But just like we're seeing a pivot to resident satisfaction and keeping people happy there, I think we're seeing the really desperate need for a pivot with our employees in extending empathy, understanding burnout, understanding mental health, understanding their workload. We had a lot of communities that were telling us how short staffed they were. And you can only run that short staffed for so long before the employees who are there say, I cannot do this anymore. I can't work the workload of 2 or 3 people and it just be me. And that's even without all these other extenuating circumstances we see in the industry. So I think that we will see in the future a return, hopefully it's a return to and expansion of understanding what our employees are going through, really understanding how to be empathetic towards them, give them tools, making sure that our budgets reflect what our employees need, not just marketing budgets and resident retention, because it's all this intricate puzzle where every piece locks together. And if you're losing your employees, that creates an idea of instability for your residents as well. So it impacts resident satisfaction because they lose that human connection. It impacts your business all the way around. So I think it's hopefully something that people are really starting to pay attention to. And I hope our executives are really focused on what they can do to take care of their people because it's necessary.
I will go ahead and put a shameless plug in here. Mid-June, right around Apartmentalize, everyone go download the mental health survey report from NAA. Chelsea, you and I, we co-did this research together, right? So a little bit of a plug for us, but you should read it. There's a lot of really good information there. Won't get into it on this particular podcast. But again, you want to talk about retaining employees. It starts with the mental health, the work-life balance, and that report kind of dives into that.
Yeah.
So let's talk for a minute about the differences in thought process between the different levels of our industry, right? One of the big things I think the leader survey really highlights is some of the discrepancies between our C-level and on-site teams. So regarding that discrepancy, particularly around rental increases and affordability concerns, what can companies do to bridge this gap and ensure alignment between leadership priorities and the realities faced by the on-site teams?
I love this question. Let me tell you why. I think that this is a perfect example of what we were just speaking about. So we're saying, how can I retain my employees? And I feel like, shameless plug for you and I, all the research we do is screaming, listen to them, ask them, have you asked them, right? Let's what they're going through and then go, okay, I hear you. It is so often, I think we look for answers in data. And I know we are both big data nerds. I hope that's okay for us to say. I hope I didn't out you, that no one knew that you were a data nerd.
I think if you spent more than 5 seconds with me, you might realize
Yeah.
that I just dream about numbers at night anyway, so it's probably fine.
So one of the things that has been sustaining me over the last few years of looking at numbers and seeing our industry really start to dive deep into data analytics and all of that is this principle that I've come to think of as connection first. And again, I can imagine you're like, Chelsea, where are you going with this? Let me put it together for you this way. So we are looking and making decisions as executives or as business owners based on numbers. And sometimes we're forgetting about human connection. We are forgetting about it when we're trying to figure out how to retain our employees. And this particular data point highlights it so well in that what might look fantastic on a budget, which is rent growth, right? Unprecedented rent growth. That is fantastic news for our industry as a whole. What that might mean to someone on site, particularly your property managers, your assistant managers, and your leasing agents, is that they have had to have an unfathomable number of really difficult conversations where they explain to someone over and over and over again that their rent is going up and there's nothing they can do about it. And that takes a toll on those folks, right? Can you imagine if every day you had to go to work thinking about how you're going to be yelled at because someone's bill is going up? I equate it to like the cable industry. I'm sure bless the cable customer services people's hearts. But in this instance, you actually know these people. You know them in some cases really well, and it's their homes. So I think what we have lost with maybe our regional and executive level not understanding how difficult that is because they haven't had the time, due to no fault of their own, I think most of the time, to make the connection with their on-site teams to say, hey, what are the hard conversations you're having? Where is your stress coming from every day? What is difficult right now? And I think the answer to that is they're having to have those hard questions asked of them and answered. And when they ask for maybe some help or some training, that's not always happening there. So if I were an executive leader, I would really want to be going to my teams in person as much as I can, right? Please don't do like the undercover boss thing and like shock them and scare them. But just say, hey guys, like I want to spend the day and see what is your day like? What are the conversations you're having? Where are you getting frustrated? Because I think the other thing that shows that that is true is the affordability piece, right? They were saying like, hey, affordability is a problem. And that's because that is what they are hearing every day. So if we think about how can we restore connection, we have to restore connection and have connection first, not only with our residents, but also with our team members, and make sure that we understand and have empathy for what they're going through. And if we don't know, that's a problem. So we've got to ask and have a better connection with our team members.
I think that's perfect, right? It's just highlighting the difference in the types of conversations that have at the different levels. I think once everyone kind of aligns themselves, they'd realize that, yeah, this probably is a little bit tougher than, just looking at it from a 10,000 foot glance back. Though seeing this type of information does make me very happy that one of the parts of my job is I get to just come and talk with you. So Chelsea, I think anyone who's spent any time with you would say that you're a futurist, right? And one of the skills I think you have that a lot of people don't have is your ability to see far into the future and kind of make determinations on what's big, what might be big, and maybe something that's not necessarily the biggest importance for us right now. So I want to tap into that skill from you right now. So let's put our futurist hats on, and I want you to think about what emerging factors or potential disruptors do you think are coming that might significantly impact our industry, and how should we prepare for these potential changes?
Okay, well, we've talked about a few of them already, but I feel like those are trends that we already see, right? So we know resident satisfaction is just going to be huge for the next, I think, 2 to 5 years of if you are ahead of the game, you're already going to be winning. If you have not really started to focus on this and understand what your residents want, hurry, right? Get there really quickly. And then we talked about employee satisfaction, which we know. So let's set those aside and say, okay, we know those things. And let's talk a little bit about something that I think is going to set you apart much further into the future. Everyone is talking about AI and automation, right? I love that for everyone. That is great. I think these are wonderful tools that can be used in a lot of great ways in our industry. But what I've been thinking a lot about as a leader in our industry, and what I think some future leaders should think about, is what is going to set you apart in the age of AI in multifamily. And I think this is not official Jay Turner research. This is just Chelsea thinking about, years and years and years down the road. I think what is going to begin to set communities apart, management companies, businesses as a whole apart, is their focus on what makes them uniquely great. So I think if we begin to say, what makes this company, what makes this group of properties, what makes us unique, what makes us different, what sets us apart, that is going to start to really be elevated, because we're going to see more and more content that starts to look similar. We're going to see more and more marketing that starts to really look similar. I think we're already seeing this. I saw a really interesting article recently that just showed how all the book covers have started to look the same, right? Like used to, book covers were really unique and magazine covers were really unique, or movie posters, even though they're not really posters now, graphic design. It's all starting to look frankly almost identical, I would venture to say. And one of the things they talked about as well was like the rise of the look of Airbnb, right? This look of Airbnbs now has kind of translated over to home design, which is, I don't know about if you've seen this, Marcus, white with black accent. Like every house in my neighborhood is being painted white with black accents. Are you seeing this too?
I call that the Chip and Joanna Gaines special.
Yes. But it's fascinating to see that it's not regional, right? It's not just happening in Texas or California or Maine. It is like this international Airbnbification, as I call it, of this look that's like aesthetically non-disruptive. And so I'm saying that as an example of in our industry, I think what we will start to see is that people who find a niche are going to be more successful, both personally and collectively as a community or as a brand, that you're going to really want people as this homogeny continues, right? Of everything starting to be more similar. And as people start to have similar experiences, like if I go to every community and I have the same experience because maybe the same AI model is running the chatbot or the same model is running that virtual tour, man, can you imagine how I'd feel if I got to a community and I'm not saying they should do this, but someone's like dressed really crazy and fun and has a great personality and is like, we're going to hula hoop to the the model. You know, it sounds so ridiculous, but you would be so refreshed by almost the absurdity of it in contrast to the monotony of the usual, that I really feel like that's going to be the cutting edge for the future for communities and businesses and for our industry, is people figuring out that perfect mix of how to make sure we are efficient and profitable and we're doing things well, but that we're also really understanding what makes us different, what makes us great, and we're allowing people to be people in a way that really accelerates our business. I think that's where it's going. Tell me what you think.
I absolutely love everything you say. This one in particular, one of my biggest pet peeves is LinkedIn. Just in general, I dislike the site, but you'll see me on there. But in particular, one of the things that I've been noticing in a much heavier form than any time before is the use of the AI generated art for every single post that someone's doing. It's like, give me a man drinking coffee, give me a woman, sitting in a boardroom meeting or whatever. And then like they have like their post with it or whatever. But every single time you see that, you're just like, that's AI generated art. And there's nothing against AI generated art or anything like that. I'm not saying like don't include these in your post, but it does start to feel very repetitive. Everyone's looking for the same thing that got, person X this many followers and person Y that many followers, and they kind of have similar posts. So let's copy that. I think you're right. One of the things that will, bring businesses more success in the future is being able to differentiate themselves from what everyone else
Yeah.
is doing. These tools, fantastic, but we also have to have that personal touch that goes with it.
Well, and Marcus, tell me this, because you are a brilliant mind, and I do love these conversations so much. As there's more of that content flooding the, we'll say market in general, we'll just say market, AI will begin to use that content for its decision making or for its content to be made. So now you have this weird, and I'm sure there's some technical term, right? What is this? Where AI generated content will be feeding the AI to generate content, which will continue to cause this boring phenomenon. I think that we're going to see, at least that's what I keep imagining will be part of the problem in my mind, because as we see with any trend cycles, which that's really all, I think, being a futurist, and I hope futurists don't come for me after listening to this. I'm sure it's very technical and difficult, but one of the things they do well is just they see a trend coming, right? They say, what does this look like? And I think one of the things that you can see is like everybody starts to have mass adoption. So as everyone begins to get more mass adoption of AI tools, whether it's in marketing, in touring, in leasing, in resident conversations, I think we're going to get to a point of mass deployment of these tools where they're just almost regurgitating themselves. Is that a possibility?
We would call that an echo chamber, right? When you're just
There
being
we go.
fed the same thing over and over, and then you're spitting out the exact same information over and over again. So
Yeah. So I think being a disruptor is going to be the key to success.
perfect. I have served you up softball questions this entire podcast. So now I want to, give you the fastball and give you a chance to really
Okay.
knock it out of the park. This is a
Okay.
difficult one. How did you get started in the industry? I cannot imagine that little Chelsea, as a little girl, right, is sitting in her room thinking, man, I cannot wait to think about multifamily research.
I'm laughing so hard because I think what you would not be surprised to know is that I walked around and talked to everyone all the time and
Not surprising,
was
actually.
having
You're
these,
right.
not surprising, right? Having these long, drawn out conversations with adults. I was the weird kid who would walk up, with my iced tea and be like, so, to grown-ups. And they're like, please go away. Do you have something to play with? But I got started in multifamily actually. I think hopefully is a kind of funny story. I was in school to be a special education teacher. I've always been very passionate about education. And my sister suffered from a TBI, a severe TBI, when I was growing up. So then I became extremely passionate about special education and how to cater education to different needs. I'm doing that. I'm also working 3 jobs, I think, at one time to try to pay my way through college. And I worked at a tanning salon. Yes, kids. We used to get cancer on purpose. We did. It was great. At least we thought it was. And I'm just young, in there. And this woman walks into this salon and she says, you can tell she's had a pretty bad day. She goes, do you smile like that all the time? And I said, what? Like, I have no idea what she's talking about. I said, what do you mean? And she goes, are you this friendly? And do you smile like that all the time? Or like, are you just having a really good day? And I said, I think so. Yes. And she goes, okay, come interview with me tomorrow. And if you make it through this interview, I'll pay you $2 more an hour than whatever they're paying you here, which again, in olden days money was insane. Like $2 more an hour was everything. I was worried that I was being set up for some like murder plot movie, but I did look them up. She gave me her business card. It was a legitimate company. I got to the interview. It was for a leasing position. I interviewed with her. Then I immediately interviewed with the regional, and they offered me the position on the spot, which was, again, insane to me that would happen. And that is how I got started because I talked a lot and smiled a lot. And they said, there's our girl. She should be a leasing agent.
I can confirm the smile a lot, and I can confirm the talk a lot. These definitely are Chelsea traits, in my opinion.
Yeah, I just want to tell every female out there, if you were told you talked too much in school or you had to get your desk put in the corner because you wouldn't shut up, you too can be successful in multifamily. You just bring that skill set right over here. We need you. You're a leader.
All right, Chelsea. I think that we have talked quite a bit. We've got some great information. What final thoughts do you have for us?
I think my final thoughts are for our leaders because I really hope that, we put so much effort into this study and understanding over the years what's changed, what's coming up next, really trying to figure out how we can be better leaders for our teams. And I would love, love, love if they all took a second this year when they were planning or even looking forward to 2025 and said, do I know how to best serve my team members at every level? Do I best know how to serve my residents at every level? And if they think that the answer is no, that they begin to decide what are the best tools to listen and figure that out. We have some ideas. Call us. But I really, really hope that is, what is taken away from this is that if you can put connection first with the humans in your life, whether it's the folks you work with, the people you're serving in your business, that you're going to be more successful. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Chelsea.
thank you, Marcus. You're a delight, as always.
Thanks for listening in on another episode of the Multifamily Leaders Podcast. If you found today's insights valuable, be sure to download the Leader Survey report from our website. Also, please subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to make sure you get the latest episodes. And if you have any comments, suggestions, or emotional outbursts, please be sure to send them to us at podcast@jturnerresearch.com.